Digital utopia. Welcome to the new normal.
Hello and welcome to MilkBarTV Podcast. My name is Nathan and I'm very excited to welcome you to the podcast first episode. So, what is MilkBarTV? Well, MilkBarTV began October 2021 with the introduction of the widespread vaccine mandates in Melbourne, Australia, and me finding myself fired and unemployed for refusing to get vaccinated. This left me with a fair bit of time on my hands, so I ended up filling it making satirical videos, poking fun at and observing the inconsistencies, hypocrisy, and overall insanity that we've all seen and experienced over the past few years. I had little in the way of expectations for these videos, and to my surprise, immediately got great feedback for them. You can watch most of them on my MilkBarTV YouTube, which I've linked in the description below. Well, the ones that YouTube allows. For the rest, you can go to my Twitter, @TheMilkBarTV, or my Patreon, where you can also support me, MilkBarTV. My hope with this podcast is it'll be an extension of what I've been doing with the videos, but also a great opportunity to have interesting conversations with open-minded and engaging guests. And we've got a really good one for the first podcast. Cristian from The Last American Vagabond has been occupying this space, tackling reporting on the culture wars, news, current affairs, everything that the corporate press refuses to cover and also covers up. And he and his Last American Vagabond team have been doing great work over the past few years, tackling everything to do with COVID, the pandemic, the vaccines, and the war in Ukraine. And I'm very, very happy and proud that he gave his time to come on this podcast and have a chat with me. How long has Last American Vagabond actually been around?
I would say probably 15 years, give or take.
Wow.
Is that right? At least plus 10 plus, but it's there was a big time where it was, not what it is today. You know what I mean? Like where it was being built and, and it was focused on specific topics. And I would say that it started, as most people know it, in earnest after I started the Daily Wrap Up. I started doing the video show and the podcast and, and that's what kind of grew into what it is today. Now that was probably 5-6 years ago.
Did you find that with the pandemic that things kind of kicked up a whole other level?
Yeah, in every way, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, well, this is what this is what it is.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, content-wise, specifically, yeah, I think that and even to a secondary point, I think we all were questioning whether we were doing the right thing by focusing on it. But yeah, it really did create this kind of tunnel vision for a while, and still, where. Like, for instance, I was, really, and I still am, but I was really focused a lot on foreign policy, Israel, their foreign policy, Palestine, Yemen. And I still am I actually have a whole segment that I keep putting off that I want to get on around Yemen. But when this started, I was just blown away by how obviously, I mean, it was like it checked every box of all the things we'd all been going. This is what we know. Oh, conspiracy theory. Oh, the New World Order, conspiracy theory, all these things. And we're going, whoa, man. Like I even had a running list in the beginning where I'm like, every single thing that was once conspiracy theory is like being warped into this, like every single one of them, like digital ID, cashless society. And I was just like, oh my God, and so everybody started really tunnel visioning, focusing on COVID-19 and the pandemic. And I right about, so many months into it, like before the injections and rolling out and everything, you got this really heavy, which I think we can now honestly engage with as a propaganda effort, social engineering, this effort to make you stop doing that. All these still chittering people in the comments going, why are you still talking about COVID? This is, geez, get another tune, that kind of stuff like that. And I'm going, you know what? Like, it influences you to a degree, but I've always been like, you know what? I don't care. I mean, I care what the audience thinks and says, but I don't let it influence or dictate what I think. I do what I think is important. Yeah. No matter what, at all costs, right? Even often if that challenges my audience, sometimes are like, they don't like where I'm going with it, but I think it's bad for content creators to allow their audience to essentially dictate what they talk about, because you create echo chambers, Yeah. So I just powered through and and obviously I think this is one of the most important things we've ever done. I mean, it's obvious that this is big and important. In every other context though, this changed everything to a degree. And I think that was by design to some degree, but I think that the pushback and all that we've done, including your videos and everything, we've made a difference, and so I think we're, fighting it back to a degree.
Yeah. I still find myself trying to get away and I can't quite, I still get pulled back into it,
It's everything though. It's like an all-encompassing topic right now,
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I've kind of I'm not sure, when you've got your kind of like head just in it all the time, you kind of find you're quite a far bit ahead of everyone else.
Oh yeah. That goes for anything. Like if you're immersed in a topic and you're, looking at the engage, the average person, and not to, well, I mean, it's kind of an insult, but not intended as an insult. The people out there that are, they're eating their McDonald's and the Walmart and they're just sitting there watching their TV and, and they're, good on them. Your life, you can do what you want, but they are aggressively uninformed, because it's the old joke about, was it Mark Twain? Those who don't read the newspaper are uninformed. Those who read the newspaper are misinformed. And it's like, it's that game where, you're just on the, it's almost like unless you have the time and the dedication and the desire to be immersed like we are and question all that's coming across, it's just easier to be like, I don't even care. I'm not even going to read the newspaper because I know they're lying to me, but I'd rather not even know at all what's going on. So you get this entire grouping of people, which I think is larger than we realize, that doesn't trust the government, doesn't really believe what's going on, but they also kind of don't care. They're like, I just want to live my life. I don't want to know about it, And so, think about the stuff that we keep seeing, like breaking scientific studies and, these things, and we cover it and we look at it and I'm like, man, this is gigantic. It's important. And you barely see these things, even if ever, come across like a Tucker Carlson show until like 6 months later. If then, right? So think about these people. They never even see this stuff. It's damaging. It's important.
That first big video I did, the one that really kind of went crazy, the one with the compilation of the politicians saying, get the vaccine, you won't catch it.
It's a good one. I still use that.
Yeah, it was crazy. I almost didn't do that because I thought, this is old, like people, I should have done this. I should have done this months ago, and it wasn't, it was my missus. It was like, that's a great idea. You should do that.
It's more relevant right now than it's ever been.
That's crazy, right? Because when I did it, I was like, this is old. Like this is about 3 months too old. And then, even when I released it, it was still before it. Because even with the Pfizer, speed of science.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying before. You got to just trust your gut. You got it. Like, it's not necessarily that just because you, or speaking, in a plural, any of us, I, you, anybody thinks it's important doesn't therefore mean it's important, right? I mean, we could be wrong, but you got to trust what, the reason people watch your videos, the reason, it's because they see that you have an insight to some degree, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like your videos are compiling a viewpoint that they hadn't thought about before. They see it and they go, oh man, that's crazy. Look, how did they all say that? How did nobody talk about it? And it's important. And you saw it, you had the broken pieces in front of you and you said, okay, there's something there. And they didn't know it until you presented it for them, so you have that insight. That's what's important. So people then start following you because they go, okay, MilkBarTV, he can see through the tea leaves. He sees what's happening. And the problem is that a lot of times people build these audiences, and I argue it tends to be the people that are more doing this because of something other than just the truth. Right. So they follow, the profit, the money, the advertising, and the audience then guides them, what do they think's interesting? What do they get most excited about? I'm going to cover that. So you can see that's not the truth. Right. So it's more about the game, in which, to each their own. I'm in this, and I believe you are to seek the truth and inform people, Yeah. And so the point is that at some point you kind of just have to go, you know what? I got to do what I think is right. Even if that is like challenging. Like I've had situations where I've covered things where like my entire audience that I think are very objective, and they really are kind of like, you missed the mark. You know what I mean? Like that's not important. And I'm just like, I still believe it is. And I tell them, I'll talk on the show. I think I remember this exact conversation. I said, look, I can tell that you guys don't think that this is what I do, what I think is important, but I care what you think, but I'm going to do what I think is right. And I think you guys, respect that in me. So I'm going to keep covering this, and so on. So it's just very interesting. And I think it's been fleshed out. Those very topics have now come back around to be like, see, it was important, but I've been wrong too,
Even I kind of like doing a video that's kind of just out of nowhere, change up the topic just to see, all right, well, who's on board? Who am I going to lose?
Right.
And then
you're always going to upset somebody. You're always going to irritate somebody.
You've got to kind of like cultivate it,
Well, see, that's my thing is I think I've cultivated an audience that is not on, the moment that you go afoul of their opinion that they're like, this guy's a shill, or I suddenly now see he's never been there. People that are like, okay, I disagree, but I understand why he thinks that. And we're allowed to disagree. It's like, that's where we always should have been. And we hopefully at some point were, but today, my God, at least the people that you see in the majority, that's not, I don't think it's the majority anymore, but what the corporate media tells you is the majority, these people they've lost their minds on both sides of the paradigm, like just subjectively assuming things and grabbing onto side and ignoring evidence on, whether that's about Trump or the vaccine. It's like, it's kind of crazy. But I do think that, that's why what we do is so important, because we have to stick to objectivity and what we believe is true, even if we get it wrong sometimes. Yeah. We have a right to be wrong, don't we? That's free speech.
Yeah. I was talking with a friend yesterday for the podcast, and he's got a vaccine injury. It wasn't until after 6 months of, terrible symptoms that he actually kind of started to come out and start to talk about it, And now he's full on red pilled down the rabbit hole, and
hard not to be when you're dealing with it, and then get called crazy.
He's well and truly this kind of thing of just like, how could I not have seen this, years ago?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that, we don't, it's always obvious after it becomes like after everybody can see it, there's an old analogy or story. I don't even know if it's rooted in truth. So it doesn't even technically matter. I think people tell this as if it's related to some historical figure, but the point still is the same, is that you have a group of people sitting around a table, and one of the people at the table is the person who just achieved something great. And everyone's going, oh, whatever. Like anybody could have done that. Anybody could have done it. You just was the first one to do it. And they go, okay, well, here's an egg. Take this egg, and I want every single one of you to try to balance this egg, or try, stand the egg up on its tip. Right. Okay. And everyone tries, and they can't get it. Falls over. Comes back to the same guy, and he just takes the egg and he smashes it on the table. So it stands on the tip. And he goes, you see, everything's simple once you see, how to do it. Now, okay, well, there you go. But before that, I didn't say you couldn't crash the egg. I didn't say there's no barriers. You guys in your minds created the rules that you thought were there. The point is that it's about people willing to take that step. And do the thing that nobody talks about. Then, of course, they're like, oh, yeah. Nah. Like, think about the way the media is discussing, even today. There's stuff today coming out that's blowing my mind about, like, Bill Gates, like, basically casually discussing how the mRNA vaccines are failing. Like, really? Like, so you've been forcing people to this point, and now it's like, oh, yeah, we all see it now. Well, yeah, you all see it now because we forced you to point at it, And it's like there's people out there that are only now opening their minds to like, okay, maybe it isn't working because Bill Gates said so. Even though we have been screaming and showing science, and, it's just kind of the same point. It's just amazing what people need to take that step,
Yeah. I, especially with the kind of vaccine injured, I've been thinking about a lot. It kind of reminds me of in the Bible, Paul. He's like stories that he's the most kind of like, let's stone those Christians, completely against them. And then it's just like a beam of light kind of blinds him. And it's just God just, appearing in front of him. And then suddenly he just has this conversion. And immediately, he actually goes blind, I think. So he's blind for a certain amount of time. And then he just commits his entire life just to, I think he came up with kind of the idea of kind of evangelizing, Even to this day, the kind of missionaries that's still kind of based on his model. But he immediately, he converts to Christianity, and then everyone he ever knew was anti-Christian to the point of trying to stone them. So he's kind of completely ostracized from his entire community. And I can't help but kind of draw that parallel between vaccine injured people, Yeah. It was just this thing of just like, I'm all in. This is, this is the way, and anyone else is a threat.
Right, exactly. That's exactly the right terminology. I mean, think about how, I can't help but draw a parallel with, for instance, like any example you want to pick, really, Yemen, Syria, whatever, where you have people being killed, bombed, families being exploded in front of them. And then they look at the news and they're going, these people, you're a terrorist.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine what that must feel like, going like, I'm the terror, like I am, like you just murdered my family and I wasn't doing anything. You know, you just made me one, maybe, right? Now I'm going to lash out because of what you did. Same kind of thing. You got people out here that are being radicalized in their own right because of what they went through, because they were vaccine injured, because they were forced into this. And then, you know, or rather, excuse me, they were, because they were going along with it because they believed it and they bought the narrative and they drank the Kool-Aid and now they can't walk. You know what I mean? And now they're going, finally, they're looking into your videos and stuff and going, wow, maybe they were right, you know? But to your point, all your entire circle, everyone around you is like, you were just 30 seconds ago telling us we were all right. Now we're wrong. You know, it's like you get ostracized, like you create that. But that's nobody's fault but the government and the pharmaceutical companies. But I consider it all the government as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's interesting because you do have those kind of three groups, you know, the vaccinated, still like, you know, on the bandwagon, unvaccinated, and the kind of vaccine injured. And it's interesting just seeing the three together. This kind of idea of like, well, how do we move forward? You know.
What blows my mind is the people that get injured but then still promote it. That's some they're straight up like cult level. You know what I mean? Like people that were like are aware even that the vaccine caused it, and they go, oh, but it was rare. And I did it for the right reasons, so I still stand by it. I'm like, my God, that's just ridiculous. You know,
especially parents with kids.
Exactly.
You know,
kids with a ridiculously below the flu level risk, if even there, of COVID, and yet they're forcing their children to do it. It makes no sense.
There was a doctor who was, I think, one of his kids got vaccine injured. And he's like, I'm still going to vaccinate my other kid because I'm a doctor. You know, it's like that's so crazy.
Brainwashing.
But that thing of just, you know, that somehow that government, the propaganda to get to that power to kind of like overrule that parenting instinct, you know?
Yeah. Scary.
It's terrifying. How do you balance, you know, doing your show, you know, and thinking about everything all the time with trying to kind of switch off? Do you have, you know, a friendship group or family that are in, you know, are kind of just like, I don't want to hear it?
Yeah. No, my family, for the most part, is my saving grace. I'm lucky to have, you know, most of my inner, you know, immediate family are very aware, save for, I think, you know, one or a couple, you know. But before all of this, really, not even just COVID, but before like the last American Vagabond, but, you know, specifically COVID forward, you know, I've always been a very social person, have, you know, large friend groups and so on, but I moved to be closer to my family. And so I kind of lost that, like, where you grow up kind of, you know, just given friend circle, you know, and then since all of this and since work, I feel like I do nothing else. And, you know, it's funny. A lot of people know that have moved out of their home, you know, area at being an adult. And especially when you don't have, like, so I used to work in restaurants. I'm chef, classically trained at the Culinary Institute of America and so on. And that's what I used to do before I started doing this. And, you know, you get used to having friends in the restaurants and meeting, you know, you don't, you know, my point being is that you get to a point when you're an adult and you move and jobs change and you're like, how exactly do adults make friends? You know, like, hi, you want to be friends? Like, you're that weirdo. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it doesn't happen as organically as it did when you were growing up and you don't have your job. And it's kind of funny. You know, it happens. You just got to find your way out, especially when you're busy with work. You don't. But my point is, I don't really have as many friend circles I used to, but I've met some really great people here, people that I now work with, specifically like Courtney Turner and Scott Armstrong of Rebunked. And, you know, these people live in Tennessee, and I would consider that both my work and friend circle, but then my family is really what it's all about, you know, that they support me. They even, you know, to be honest, even the ones that don't believe or understand what I'm saying, they still support me. It's just, I really respect that about my family, you know, but that's everything, you know, that's why, because I really don't do anything else, and that's by choice. I mean, especially my mother is really hard on me, you know, grandkids and so on, the typical mother stuff, you know, and I'm just, this is all I do right now, because I personally feel this is, you know, this is the biggest thing we've ever seen. You know, this is like species level manipulation, and that scares me. And I think it's important to put everything into this right now.
Yeah, we moved from Victoria to New South Wales last July. So it was moving from because Victoria, Melbourne was the worst by far in Australia and in the world at times.
Yeah.
So it was this, we were trying to get out for quite a while, and it was just impossible. So yeah, finally fleeing the border was a real relief.
Man.
I
don't know. I can't even imagine like New Zealand, Australia, some of these points, just like a totalitarian hellscape. It seems, it's crazy. Yeah,
It's
I just
crazy.
don't even. Yeah, I mean, more than anybody. I just know from reporting it. You live there, like it's just I can't even imagine. Even in the United States, it didn't get as ridiculous, at least on the narrative. Like I don't know, maybe it's just perception, but it just seems that in those places it got far more intense and still is to this point more than most anywhere else.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that being there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's an undercurrent,
That's crazy.
And because this thing of, the Premier, Dan Andrews, got re-elected. And so, it's this, it was this thing of like, all right, well, this is Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah,
people are kind of
definitely
clinging out of fear to someone who's kind of offering security. And they're willing to kind of trade freedom for that. And so then the election came. It's like, well, here's a kind of referendum on how we actually feel about, the lockdowns and vaccine mandates, and and he got back in. So it's my kind of attitude is just like, get the hell out of there.
Yes. I personally don't trust any of these elections, to be quite honest. I just find it impossible to believe that these people, with what they're doing in the world today, and even before this, to be quite honest, would leave it up to chance. Like even if you don't, whether or not it's the entire thing doesn't count or matter, or that they just have gamed who is running. So whether you vote or not, it doesn't matter who wins, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
I just don't think it's. I would be much more versed on like the U.S. side of this, so I can't speak to like the deeper manipulations of Australian inner working political stuff. But I just think it's ridiculous to think that these people that are clearly completely unconcerned with how we feel about things, right? They would just be like, we have all these plans. It doesn't even have to be like conspiracy theory, whatever people out there think is, just open plans. Like, we want to do this. We want to roll this out. We want set digital currencies, that they're going to just be like, okay, we have it all planned. Now let's hope they vote for what we want. Like, come on. It just seems almost ridiculously naive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it. And so I would say that these people get put in those positions because it's what's necessary. And they want people to think, they want people like us to think, if I'm right, that we're the minority.
Yeah.
Right. That's what that shows you, right? Well, shit, everybody voted him in, so I must be the wrong one. That's kind of what they want from us. And I just don't buy that.
Yeah.
I think the world shows us right now that most people are very aware to one degree or another that something's wrong.
Australia is terrifying. After the election and he got re-elected, I did like a tweet where it was like, all right, well, Victoria's Australia's California. Is there a Florida? And the overwhelming answer was no, pretty much no. There's Queensland up north, which is kind of the closest thing to the south for us. But even still, like hardcore lockdowns, chasing COVID zero. There's no kind of Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
Who,
I question a lot of that too, though.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. But even still, you still have that as an option. You still have like a California, Florida. Where it's like, right, well, here are two states that have very different kind of values. Whereas Australia's a big country, like it's huge, but surprisingly, it's very everywhere you go. Especially city-wise, you go out to the kind of country, it's very different to metropolitan. But city-wise, you go around, it's like everyone's really the same, really. And there's no real cities.
Do you think that's because of outside influence? My opinion is that Australia and New Zealand function in the world essentially as like vassal states to these larger Western powers, US, UK kind of things. And then in reverse, you get wildly different things from state to state. It's like and so argument would be if it was in reverse and the United States was simply just subservient to a larger power that was dictating largely what they did, it probably wouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. Like Australia is largely manipulated by a lot of these outside countries. So they probably maintain a certain strict kind of, I don't know. That's just my thought. It's not based on anything really. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and we're reliant as well. We ship everything overseas, so we're relying on that, and now all the manufacturing comes from China and, Bangladesh,
Right.
and, so,
It's funny that that's a big problem today politically for certain people, even though it's been completely made to be the case by those same political people. It's like, it's so strange.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like,
that's amazing. Seeing Germany now, with the energy crisis, it's amazing. That kind of idea of like coal, like, you shut down the nuclear, so now you got to go 2 steps back.
it's just all engineered. I mean, it's just so, and it's like transparently so. This is kind of what I mean. It's just like they're playing into this as if they pretend like they've got some majority backing. And it's like, you're literally going, look, we're going to destroy your lives for a better reason that we can barely even define right now.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just wild. And people are like, but no, I don't want that. I don't want higher gas prices. I don't want a $4,000 energy bill. Like, it's just, it's kind of crazy. Yeah. But I think they're committed. Like as a world kind of like entity, whatever that is right now. All these governments are clearly in lockstep to what they're doing. It's alarming, but I really don't think they've got the support that they want people to think they do right now.
Oh, no, especially you saw that with the lockdowns. There was a lot of people that were like, all right, yeah, I'm on board, and people who embraced it wholeheartedly, and people who still to this day, the people who are still wearing the mask, and they're like, I don't want to give it up, I'm loving this kind of safety blanket that this gives me, and the kind of power over other people,
Yeah. That's a mental sickness right there. I mean, like, think about the absurdity of, and this again, all these things are so right on the surface, transparent and hilarious in a macabre sort of sad way. So we have these people that are like, trust the science, right? And so, and in their minds in the beginning, that is okay. Even though Fauci said the opposite, and then, same point right there, which is just ridiculous. But okay, but now he was right the second time. Okay, so wear your mask because trust the science. So they all wear the mask, and then jump forward to whenever they first started going, okay, you can take your mask off now, whatever that is, which then, ebbed and flowed 35 times. But in the beginning, take your mask off. It's good. There was a period there where they said, we're over the hump, whatever, you can take your mask off. And all of them are like, no. Many of them even challenged the CDC and said, how dare you? Yeah. It's like, okay, right there. What are you trusting right there? Yeah. So your mind, the science was what the CDC said. Now the CDC changes it and you attack them. Like, you can see very clearly that's a psychosis. Like, those people are, their narrative in their mind, which they've grasped onto, is the only thing that matters. And that's not coupled to anything anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, what are they actually trusting? And that's happened every single time throughout this, whether lockdowns or injections. It just becomes trust the narrative, even when their side suddenly goes a different way. Like, it's like they've brainwashed all these people, and then those people turn on them.
Yeah.
It's what happens when you don't have control. It's interesting.
Yeah. Did you catch the story of we had this top doctor in Australia, Karen Phelps?
Name sounds familiar. What was the story?
The story was that she was hardcore. She was, she's a doctor, but she's also involved in politics. So she was a big proponent of lockdowns, masks, everything, all of it, and then vaccines. And then, lo and behold, she and her partner both get vaccine injuries.
Oh, yes. I remember now. And they both spoke on the record afterward going the other direction. Right. Yeah. That's good.
And it's,
good story.
But it's crazy, right? Because I remember seeing...
Oh, sorry. Not good she got hurt, by the way, for those in the record. I just mean good that she came out and spoke, just to clarify.
Sure, yeah. And internationally, it was like, well, this is great. Again, not that she got vaccine injured, but it's great that you have someone who has credibility that can actually kind of speak out.
Yeah, Dr. Malhotra, that they moments ago were screaming that you were an evil, terrible, ridiculous person for not doing it. And then they're like, I changed my mind. Now I see that it's bad. It's like, how does that not change the entire story?
But hers is wild because it's like, that's not, it's, you go to her Twitter page and all of it is still, almost to the extent of we need to bring back lockdowns. We should bring back masks. Wow. And long COVID needs to be fully researched. I think
they're going to blame this on it. They're going to. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, she can't give up that. She can't give up that the status that she has.
It's her community.
It is,
It's the people around her, and so she can't stray away from it, even though she sees it, because everyone's like, "But you're wrong, though." And she goes, and then she probably goes, "Am I wrong? I mean, everyone, all my highly respected, highly intelligent people, that's how they see it,
Yeah.
These people, and this is what I think about a lot of these doctors too, is that they have been trained. It's almost hubris that I'm smart. And I'm told smart people listen to the CDC, and all my smart friends are all like, "Why are you questioning?" So I know I'm smart, so I'm going to do the smart thing. Like, that's what that is. Yeah. I know people like that are just like overwhelmed with the idea that they are intelligent, and if I don't do this, then I'm not intelligent. So it's just brainwashing. Oh, yeah. It's like the real intelligent thing is to think for yourself and to question everything coming your way. That used to be what we regarded as intelligence. Now it's conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Yeah, well, before doing these videos, I was, trying to be an independent filmmaker. I wasn't political in any kind of way. Same kind of thing where it's just, I don't know. I either it's always been this way or it's changed. But, my memory was that when you were trying to be an artist, you were trying to be an individual,
Mm-hmm.
and that you were trying to kind of find your perspective and voice in the world and, And do you know what? If you were different, that's actually a benefit, an asset,
It always is in my mind.
Yeah, whereas now it's just like, it's terrifying. It's just invasion of the body snatchers,
Yeah, it's conformity, right? It's collectivism. Like that's where they don't want artists and musicians and paint. They don't want that. They want mindless, obedient workers. And this isn't even my opinion. I mean, let's remember that our entire, speaking from the United States, our entire school system, and this is not something that's, you look it up. It's on freaking Wikipedia. If not that means that it's true because it's there, but Wikipedia shows mass adoption. The point being that it's a Prussian-based system. Prussian with a P, right? The point is that was designed to pump out people that were mindless automatons that just did what they were told. They were cogs in the machine. That's what our entire school structure is built on. Yeah. And simultaneously, our medical system is based on triage. Yeah. Which these are all facts. Yeah. Triage meaning that it was about getting people just healed enough to get back out into the war. It's what we do. Yeah. It's like why, and we act like we're the leading institute. I think this is a True Street Media that made this joke a long time ago, and I always think this is going to hold true, is that we're going to look back on this time. Whenever we get clear of all this, hopefully, and we're going to look at a time and go like, remember back in the day when we used to think that medicine was giving ourselves chemicals and cutting things off our body? Think about how crazy that is. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where it's like, even saying it out loud right now, it's like, that's Western medicine, right? Instead of teaching your body and being healthy to have your body heal itself, like homeopathy. Yeah. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah. It's really fascinating. I kind of, at the same time that I don't know, I'm similar to you. I wouldn't kind of box myself into any kind of political, side, I mean, it would be kind of libertarian, center right or something along those lines. But I think definitely, when I was more of a kind of like a early 20s, going to film school and everything, it's much more kind of on the left,
Oh yeah.
And it's just, a whole lot of like, why not? Like, why not everything, And then you kind of get a little bit older and you kind of, you start to kind of return back to some values that you kind of, brought up with, and you're kind of like, all right, I understand now why this exists.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't understand why we have it's tribalism. I mean, and this is the whole two-party paradigm. It's the essence of how we're manipulated today. I don't understand why we feel the need to associate ourselves to our detriment with one of these sides, right? Because we've seen this happen where people are like, oh, well, like Gabbard coming out and going, I'm switching sides because they no longer. I'm like, so what are you really saying is that you have nothing that's sacred. So you don't care. You're picking a side. So the point should be, I'm going to maintain my side because I still have the left values and the rest of them are no longer the left. But you go, no, I'm now moving to this side because, so they have completely different values and principles than what you even said you did before. So it just means nothing. It's meaningless. It's a game. I don't understand why we do this, because the point should be about integrity, about objective, about policy. Right? Let's go individual policy, and I'll give you my opinions on what I personally want, regardless of what side they may fall on. Today, people will be like, well, I want this, but that's perceived as the right. I don't want to be perceived as, then I'm just going to go this way and vote for that. It's like, well, then you're ridiculous. You're voting based on a team and not on what you actually care about. Eventually, they just come to warp themselves into caring about whatever that side cares about because that's their identity. Right, this is the game. We're being socially engineered in such aggressive ways, that alarms me more than anything, to be quite honest.
The thing with the vaccines in particular was kind of a mind blowing thing, though. Because especially with me and my partner, she came from much more of this kind of a health standpoint, which is much more kind of like homeopathic, natural kind of remedies. And so for her, it was like, absolutely, I'm not doing that. And then for me, it was this idea of just like, well, I mean, the government should be able to, shouldn't be able to dictate what you put inside your body,
Right.
So we kind of converged, coming from different angles, and then going to the protest, it was mind blowing. The actual real diversity of people there. It was
that's the important part right there, that this is what they're desperate to make us think, is that this is bipartisan.
Yeah.
Very early, this became immediately clear that this was completely outside the bounds of the two-party paradigm.
Yeah.
Left, right, because it kind of crossed over all this stuff. You got people on the left that are like, aren't we supposed to be caring about medical freedom? It's like, and so they still care about it. And you got people on the right that are like, the government's too powerful. I don't want this to be, and so you had this overlap. And so they were desperate to try to warp it into only, alt-right, white supremacist, domestic terrorists fight the vaccine.
Yeah.
And it worked to a group of people. I don't think it was the majority, right? It scared you. But yeah, this was nonpartisan from the get-go.
We had the biggest protests in Australian history. They say otherwise. But I was there and you saw it, and it's, like 300,000 people.
Yeah.
And
well, look at Canada and the trucker protest kind of thing. Same thing. They were so desperate. And look, I'm convinced that even the guy with the one Nazi flag that they happen, he's got to take a picture, and then it's all Nazis, and it's
very
like, was
clean,
that
clean, crisp, brand new.
Yeah, right. And even that guy got immediately attacked by the people, and they're like, "What do you get the fuck out of here, man?"
That's right.
And so it was probably planted, but even if it wasn't, you got one guy. And the point was, people that actually talked to them, they realized that there's walks of all life across every political spectrum. But of course, the media just goes Nazis, and it's while funding Nazis in Ukraine, but a different topic,
I swear that I did a Ukraine video, and I swear they got me shadow banned. Even after,
I'm sure it did.
Musk,
it is a huge this is going to be seen as we right now. It's starting right now. They are now warping this into what I've been telling people is coming. That this has been a set plan that Whitney and I have exposed from 2020 forward. This whole thing was set up to be blaming Russia for what's happening in Ukraine, despite it being funded and on paper directed by the CIA.
Yeah.
And this is all, it's been planned. And right now they're coming out saying that, here we go, Russia's funding the Nazis. So now the Nazi problem that moments ago was completely fake news is now real, but Russia's funding it. This is how dumb this stuff is. And this is what they're now saying. The CNN article just came out saying it's the Russian imperial movement, which, by the way, is you can't even really connect to the Russian government and hasn't even gotten really much evidence on the ground in Ukraine, despite all the other things we can prove. And yet they're already trying to say they're the ones doing it. And now they're outsourcing this.
Yeah.
They're now doing what's happening in the United States and Spain and everywhere else. And you can prove that these are the Azov movement ties, which is the CIA connection, anyway. But
that was the video.
Story.
The video was Azov battalion. So,
of course,
which is a compilation of just... all the Nazism, and just the documentaries that Vice did and Washington Post did 5 years ago.
Yeah. Good. So get more the better, man. I mean, right now we're seeing this executed. It's being played out right now. This is the Azov movement and all this stuff. I mean, these are government funded regime change insurgency tactics, and it's all, for those out there, look up Project Aerodynamic. It's on the record, right? This is a CIA document where this is the new version of the Mujahideen versus Soviet Union, which for crying out loud, they made a movie about it, Charlie Wilson's War, which is propaganda in its own right. Yeah. But the point was they funded a fascist entity in Afghanistan with the sole and purpose of trying to bring down the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And even on the record before this started on 24th, they had articles being written about how the plan is to do the same kind of thing here.
Yeah.
It's all on the record, man. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Right, well, I'll let you go, but I want to say thanks for the support and sharing the videos. And
man, I really do support your work. I think you're doing great work out there, man.
Yeah, it's great. I continually have people who pop up saying, Last American Vagabond brought me here.
Awesome.